Harley's survival wasn't guaranteed. It hinged on one engine. The Evolution was running out of steam, and without the twin cam, the company could have stalled, fractured, even disappeared. This isn't just motorcycle history, it's America's near miss. Stay till the end, because the twist will change how you see Harley forever. Evo's golden age versus twin cam's absence. What if Harley had clung to the Evolution forever? That question cuts to the very heart of Harley-Davidson's survival in the modern era. The Evolution engine, introduced in the mid-1980s, was nothing short of a savior. Riders adored its simplicity, its rugged reliability, and its ability to keep Harley alive during a time when Japanese imports threatened to overwhelm the American motorcycle market. The Evo became legendary because it started easily, ran cleaner than the shovelhead before it, and required far less maintenance. It was the motor that restored confidence in the brand. But the Evolution was not perfect. Its crankcases had structural weaknesses that became more obvious as riders demanded bigger displacements. Its oil circulation was adequate for the time, but lacked the sophistication needed to meet tightening emissions rules in the 1990s. Its vibration levels, while part of the Harley charm, limited how far the company could push performance without alienating comfort-focused touring riders. By the middle of the decade, Harley engineers already knew the Evo was running out of headroom. Now imagine the twin cam never arrived to replace it. Harley would have been stuck stretching the Evo with incremental tweaks, trying to meet new regulations with old technology. Every new rule from Washington and California would squeeze the engine harder, and every attempt to bore it out further would risk reliability. The Evo might have remained beloved, but it would have left Harley trapped in the late 1980s, fighting a war with yesterday's weapons. The absence of twin cam would not only limit the Evo, it would derail the entire arc of Harley's engine development, opening the door to a far more dangerous future, a stalled lineage. Without twin cam, the Milwaukee 8 might never have arrived. That sounds dramatic, but it is the cold reality of engineering lineage. Harley's modern engines do not appear overnight. Each generation lays the foundation for the next. The twin cam was not just a motor, it was a bridge. It introduced improved oiling systems, stronger crankcases, and a platform that allowed Harley to stretch displacements well beyond the 88 cubic inches that debuted in 1999. If you remove that bridge, the whole sequence collapses. The Evo could not have supported the leap to 103 or 110 cubic inches without catastrophic reliability issues. It was already showing strain at 95 inches when modified by the aftermarket. The Milwaukee 8, with its 4 valves per cylinder and advanced cooling, required years of development built on lessons from the twin cam era. Without those lessons, Harley would not have had the technical confidence to gamble on such a radical redesign in 2017. A stalled lineage also affects perception. Riders expect each new generation of Harley engines to be bigger, stronger, and more refined than the last. If the Evo had limped along with minor updates, buyers might have assumed Harley had lost its appetite for progress. Innovation would have become a word reserved for Japanese and European brands, not Milwaukee. Harley's reputation as the guardian of tradition would have hardened into an accusation of outright stagnation. And once perception shifts, sales follow. Riders who dream of the open road do not want to feel left behind. Without twin cam, Harley risked turning from a forward-moving legend into a company locked in amber. A stalled lineage was one threat, but the more immediate danger came from rivals who refused to slow down while Harley clung to the past. If you're hooked on this ride through Harley's untold history, hit that like button. It tells me you're part of the few who care about where the legend really came from. And drop a comment below. Would you have ridden a Harley without the twin cam? I want to hear your take. The performance gap widens. What happens when rivals roar forward while Harley stands still? The answer is simple. Harley loses ground, not just in performance numbers, but in cultural authority. During the late 1990s and early 2000s, Honda was refining the Goldwing into the ultimate touring machine with silky, smooth engines and liquid cooling. Yamaha pushed its V-twin cruisers with remarkable reliability and aggressive pricing. Ducati and BMW experimented with high compression, electronic fuel injection, and designs that thrilled younger riders hungry for speed and sophistication. Now, picture Harley still leaning on the Evo while all this unfolds. The torque would still be there, but horsepower would lag embarrassingly behind. Emission standards in Europe would choke the Evo further, forcing Harley either to detune its bikes or abandon markets altogether. Younger riders comparing spec sheets would see Harley as outdated iron compared to sleek machines from Tokyo and Bologna, and the emotional effect would be devastating. Part of Harley's mystique has always been the feeling that you are riding not just a motorcycle, but a force of mechanical authority. When you twist the throttle, you expect the bike to surge with the kind of torque that intimidates everything else on the road. If rivals had consistently outperformed Harley, that mystique would have crumbled. The American V-twin would have become a charming relic rather than a competitive force. Performance gaps do not just show up on dyno charts, they show up in reputations. Without twin cam, Harley would not only be slower on the road, it would be slower in the cultural imagination. And a reputation lost is much harder to regain than a horsepower deficit. Performance gaps may appear first on dyno charts, yet their most damaging effect shows up in image. And Harley's image was about to suffer a blow it might never recover from. Harley almost missed its future, but you don't want to miss the right gear. We've prepared a list of trusted accessories and rider upgrades. Check the description. The missed branding moment. Harley's late 90s rebirth? Without twin cam, it never happens. The arrival of the twin cam in 1999 gave Harley the chance to relaunch its touring and dyna lines with fresh energy. Advertisements touted more torque, smoother rides, and an engine that looked every bit as muscular as the lifestyle Harley was selling. Riders walked into dealerships and felt like they were part of a new era. Take that moment away and Harley's image stagnates. The Evo, no matter how loved, was already a veteran by the late 90s. Without a headline-grabbing new motor, Harley's catalogs would have looked tired, its commercials recycled, and its showroom floors eerily quiet. A brand built on rebellion and renewal would have seemed incapable of reinventing itself. Branding is not just marketing, it is oxygen. The twin cam gave Harley headlines in magazines, buzz at rallies, and credibility on the world stage. Without it, the company would have looked like a manufacturer afraid of its own shadow, unwilling to risk innovation even when survival demanded it. The cultural electricity of 1999 would have fizzled, leaving Harley trapped in nostalgia without momentum. Momentum lost in branding never stays confined to marketing. It seeps into factories, dealerships, and the daily lives of workers whose futures ride on every new engine. The silent assembly lines. No twin cam meant fewer bikes to build, and quieter factories. Harley's production plants, especially those in Milwaukee and York, depended on a constant rhythm of innovation to keep their lines humming. The introduction of a major new engine always meant increased shifts, new tooling, and overtime that workers could count on to pad their paychecks. When the twin cam arrived in 1999, the excitement was not only in the dealerships but also on the factory floor. Workers felt that they were part of something historic. Now imagine that moment never comes. Without twin cam, the evolution kept lines moving sluggishly. No redesign meant no retooling, no new part orders, and no demand surge. Factories ran with less urgency, less overtime, and declining pride, draining morale. The sound of an assembly line is more than just machines. It is a measure of hope. A new engine is a declaration that the company intends to grow. Without twin cam, Harley's industrial heart would have skipped a beat, leaving employees wondering whether the company they had devoted their lives to was already in decline. The unease on the factory floor did not end at the gates. It followed straight into the dealerships where Harley's story was supposed to be sold. Dealer showrooms without a hook. What do you sell when nothing feels new? Dealers rely on more than chrome and paint. They rely on stories. The release of Twin Cam gave them a story to tell, a pitch that could spark excitement in both lifelong Harley loyalists and first-time buyers. It was proof that Harley could innovate while still honoring tradition. Walk into a showroom in 1999 and you would have seen banners boasting about new torque, smoother rides, and stronger motors. That energy is what moves bikes off the floor. Without Twin Cam, showroom buzz evaporates. Dealers still offered evolutions, but the pitch grew stale. Younger buyers saw nothing fresh, while older loyalists tired of repetition. In retail, sameness poisons momentum, and Harley's sales floor slowly lost its spark. The effect would ripple quickly. Dealerships are not just sellers, they are the local embassies of the Harley lifestyle. Without a new product to champion, their authority and their income would shrink. When dealers struggled to spark excitement, the community itself began to feel the strain, reshaping the culture in unsettling ways. Riders divided, culture stagnant. Without a new motor, the community fractures. Harley culture has always thrived on the balance between tradition and progress. When the Twin Cam arrived, it offered something both sides could respect. More performance for the younger crowd, and the same thunderous V-twin heartbeat for the old guard. It was the compromise that kept the tribe together. But imagine if that compromise never came. The Evo purists would still dominate rallies, forums, and bike nights, proud of their machines and suspicious of change. Yet without new riders joining the ranks, the average age of the Harley community would creep upward. Younger motorcyclists, tempted by sport bikes or European touring machines, would find nothing at Harley to persuade them otherwise. Over time, the culture risks turning inward, more about preservation than expansion. That kind of stagnation breeds resentment. Riders begin to argue not about which cam to install, but about whether the company still cares about them at all. Events that once pulsed with fresh energy start to feel like reunions of the same faces, year after year. Harley's legendary image as a living, breathing counterculture begins to fossilize. As the culture stalled, the consequences rippled outward, touching not just riders, but the very towns that depended on Harley's roar to survive. Local economies take the hit. Entire towns built around Harley feel the slowdown. Milwaukee is more than a headquarters, it is a cultural capital. York in Pennsylvania is more than a plant, it is a community lifeline. When new engines launch, suppliers buzz with orders, diners fill with overtime workers grabbing late-night meals, and local machine shops thrive with contracts tied to the surge. The Twin Cam years kept many of those businesses strong. Without Twin Cam, that economic ecosystem weakens. Suppliers see fewer orders. Restaurants that depend on Harley paychecks have emptier booths. Small manufacturers that make fasteners, gaskets, or casting molds lose work to overseas competitors who can offer cheaper contracts. Local pride takes a hit too. It is one thing to be the town where Harley is building the future. It is another to be the town where Harley is just keeping the past alive. The economic consequences compound over time. Workers with fewer hours spend less, which hurts local shops. Town councils see less tax revenue, which means cuts to services. The decline of one company's innovation can ripple out into the decline of entire regions. In this case, the absence of Twin Cam would not just change Harley-Davidson, it would erode the economic bedrock of the communities that carried it for over a century. Once local economies started to feel the pinch, the tremors reached higher, shaking boardrooms on Wall Street and echoing all the way to Washington. Wall Street turns on Harley. Investors do not fund nostalgia, they fund growth. Throughout the 1990s, Harley-Davidson's stock had become a symbol of American resurgence, climbing as the company's reputation for strong sales and rising demand spread across Wall Street. Analysts praised Harley not only for its heritage, but also for its ability to adapt. The arrival of the Twin Cam in 1999 reassured markets that Harley was serious about technical innovation. But imagine the scenario where Twin Cam never appeared. Without that sign of forward momentum, Harley's stock would have stagnated, or worse, slipped into a slow decline. Analysts would begin downgrading the company, citing its reliance on outdated platforms and its unwillingness to compete with Japanese and European performance standards. Hedge funds and pension funds that had bet on Harley's long-term growth would reconsider their positions. The very investors who once held up Harley as proof that American industry could modernize would now see it as another symbol of decline. Markets punish companies that do not adapt. A company can coast on loyalty for a few years, but eventually the absence of innovation becomes a red flag. In this alternate history, Harley would be under enormous pressure to restructure, cut costs, and shutter plants, all in an effort to convince investors it still had a future. Investor doubt is powerful, but the loss of political favor can be fatal, and Harley was about to see its patriotic glow dim in the eyes of Washington. Washington withdraws its embrace. Harley without innovation loses its patriotic shine. For decades, Harley-Davidson had been more than a motorcycle brand. It had been a political symbol. Presidents from Ronald Reagan to George W. Bush used Harley photo ops to project strength, resilience, and American craftsmanship. When Twin Cam arrived, it was easy for politicians to point to the company as evidence that American manufacturers could evolve and still stay true to tradition. In a world without the Twin Cam, those photo ops vanish. The White House avoids showcasing Harley, which projects stagnation. Politicians thrive on symbolism, and aging technology kills confidence. Praise once reserved for Harley shifts toward foreign automakers or defense contractors instead. The loss of political capital would have practical consequences too. Harley had benefited at times from favorable tariffs, sympathetic trade policies, and a certain degree of regulatory patience. Without Twin Cam, that goodwill would fade. Instead of being celebrated as an industry leader, Harley might find itself on the wrong side of debates about emission standards, trade deals, and labor disputes. When politicians walk away, so do international partners, and that is when the advantage shifts decisively to Japan and Europe. Japan and Europe surge ahead. When Harley stands still, rivals seize the highway. During the years when Twin Cam kept Harley competitive, Honda refined its Goldwing into a touring marvel, Yamaha delivered dependable and powerful V-twin cruisers, Ducati pushed the boundaries of performance twins, and BMW built touring machines that balanced comfort with technology. These companies were not waiting around for Harley to catch up, they were charging ahead. Without Twin Cam, the gap between Harley and its rivals would have been a canyon. The Evo platform, stretched past its limits, could not keep pace with fuel injection advances, liquid cooling systems, or the aggressive horsepower targets of European engineers. Riders comparing options in showrooms would notice immediately. On one side, a modern, reliable, and exciting machine. On the other, a nostalgic heavyweight that felt more like a tribute than a tool. The cultural blow would sting even more. Harley has always been marketed not only as a motorcycle but also as a lifestyle. Yet when performance lags badly, the lifestyle pitch weakens. Riders who wanted torque, reliability, and adventure would migrate to other brands. Harley, once the uncontested king of the open road in the American imagination, would watch its throne taken by companies from Tokyo, Bologna, and Munich. Consumers pay the price. What if riders paid more and got less? That would have been the reality if Twin Cam had never been built. Harley-Davidson motorcycles have never been cheap, but buyers accepted the cost because they felt they were getting real innovation in return. The arrival of Twin Cam in 1999 delivered torque, reliability, and a sense that Harley was investing in the future. Without it, every new model would have been saddled with an aging Evo power plant, still loved, but increasingly out of step with the times. That mismatch meant higher prices for outdated technology. Harley raised stickers to cover compliance and Evo limits, while rivals like Yamaha and Honda offered more horsepower and features. Loyalists felt betrayed, defending a brand that increasingly looked behind the curve. In the end, consumers do not mind paying for heritage if it comes with progress. Without Twin Cam, buyers would have felt punished for their loyalty, left wondering whether their dollars were funding engineering or simply nostalgia. Once customers began to feel shortchanged, the frustration soon echoed inside the plants, giving organized labor a powerful rallying cry. The labor movement pushes back. Workers do not strike over engines, they strike over futures. If the absence of twin cam meant weaker sales and stagnating production, then the unions representing Harley employees would have been quick to notice. By the early 2000s, labor groups were already pressuring American manufacturers to reinvest in domestic plants rather than outsourcing. Harley, deprived of the momentum that twin cam provided, would have looked like a company hoarding tradition while failing to invest in tomorrow. Union leaders thrive on rallying cries, and no new engine would have become a powerful one. Workers on the line might ask why they should sacrifice weekends and late nights for a product that was not keeping pace with the competition. Early strikes could have erupted, not just for better pay, but for guarantees that Harley would commit to modernizing its product line. Labor unrest is contagious. When one plant resists, others gain confidence to follow. The optics would be disastrous. A company once celebrated as the face of American resilience would suddenly be on the evening news for walkouts and stalled production. Politicians who once posed on Harley bikes would be reluctant to appear alongside striking workers carrying picket signs. The narrative would shift from Harley as an icon to Harley as a cautionary tale. Strikes and unrest at home were only part of the storm. Beyond America's borders, Harley's weakness was reshaping entire markets. Global economic ripples. Without twin cam, America loses ground abroad. Harley's export strength in the early 2000s owed much to its ability to market itself as both traditional and modern. Riders in Europe and Asia were drawn to the legend of the American V-twin, but they still demanded engines that could pass emissions tests and deliver long-distance reliability. The twin cam platform allowed Harley to meet those expectations, sustaining exports that boosted not just the company, but America's trade profile. Take that platform away, and exports shrink. Evo engines would falter under strict European rules, while Asian buyers turned to Japanese and European rivals. Every lost sale damaged Harley's bottom line and further weakened America's fragile balance of trade. Soft power matters too. A Harley on the streets of Tokyo or Berlin is not just a motorcycle, it is an American flag on two wheels. Without twin cam, fewer of those flags would fly, and America's cultural influence through motorcycling would decline. Rivals would seize the gap, selling not just machines but their own national stories of innovation. As America's export strength faltered, the company's very identity faced a crossroads. Was Harley still a cultural giant, or just a relic clinging to memory? You've seen how far the ripple reaches: factories, politics, even the global balance of power. But this story isn't over, and neither are the battles shaping Harley's future. Subscribe right now so you don't miss the next chapter in America's most dangerous motorcycle story. Stay with me, the ride's only beginning. A different Harley identity. Without twin cam, Harley never leaves its niche. The company that once embodied the open road would remain a boutique manufacturer, frozen in nostalgia. Instead of a mass-market powerhouse, it would resemble the role Triumph once played in the 1980s or Indian before its 21st century rebirth. Respected, storied, but ultimately marginal. The Harley rallies would still exist, and the chrome would still shine, but the scale would be smaller. Fewer young riders would join, and the brand's reach into mainstream culture would shrink. Movies, advertising campaigns, and political photo ops that once showcased Harley as a national icon might never materialize. The bike would be reduced to a symbol of a past era rather than an evolving force. Such an identity shift has consequences far beyond motorcycles. It means fewer jobs, weaker communities, diminished exports, and a loss of cultural confidence. The absence of twin cam would not only have changed the bikes on the road, it would have reshaped the narrative of American resilience. Harley, the company that fought back from near bankruptcy in the 1980s, might never have achieved its turn-of-the-century dominance. And when you strip away the myth of reinvention, what remains is a brand trapped in its own legend. a monument to what could have been if the twin cam had never roared to life. Harley's fate could have been very different. One engine nearly changed it all. You've seen the ripple, but the ride isn't over. Subscribe now so you never miss the next chapter of America's motorcycle story. Hit like to fuel the journey and share your thoughts below. The next revelation? You'll want to be here first.